Okay, beautiful souls. I am so excited to dig in today. We're in for a real treat. Jillian Riddle is here. She is the host of the top 2% podcast worldwide, Life Without Secrets. And Jillian is here to share her journey from teen mom to trauma nurse to relationship and transformational expert. So, through her experience with trauma therapy, marriage therapy, and working with a master teacher, she's created her own method that supports individuals and couples with deepening their love through powerful internal shifts. She is notorious for turning challenges into deep-rooted connections. And I cannot wait to unpack how she's been able to do this for herself in her relationship with her clients. So, Jillian, thank you so much for being here. I cannot wait to dig in with you.
I'm so excited to be here. This is such a treat. And I feel like we just connect so well together and just have such good energy when we're together or talking. And so glad I got to hug you in person a couple months ago. So
Yes.
this is such a treat. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I can't wait to dig in. This idea of life without secrets, by the way, this is so powerful. Like the second I heard your podcast name, I immediately was like, ooh, that resonates. Because the second I stopped telling myself, that these things about me had to be kept in a closet, right? Was so
Mhm.
much freedom for me. So I would love to dig in to that in particular. So what inspired you to start living this life where you were no longer putting things in a closet and hiding things?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I love talking about it because secrets in our lives create barriers. They create barriers to our success, to our life, to our relationships. And when I say secrets, a lot of people think like it's like your dirty little secret that you kept
Right.
from the whole world, like that naughty thing that you did. And that's actually like, I mean, it could be that, right? But that's not
Yeah.
what we're really talking about. What we're talking about is like even little things of like, how you really feel or what you really need from the world or to for yourself.
Yeah.
And many of us, especially in the world today, we hide behind the doors of our homes. We put our secrets under the rugs. We hide behind our screens, right? And we might show the world a part of ourselves that we want them to see, but inside, behind our doors and under our rugs, we're feeling alone in what we're going through.
So true.
And yeah, and what I have realized in my own journey is that by getting vulnerable, by releasing the things that I'm holding back, there's a whole level of connection, of a deeper connection in life to what I do in the world and in my relationship that's closest to me, in particular with my spouse.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of rushed energy in the world that we live in because we live in a world that like we have emails and text messages and social media and, we no longer have a separation of like home and work, right? It follows us. Some people work from home, but we have to check our emails and so there's always something we can be doing. And like we talked about this too, like before we got on, like it's so important for us to just be still and in order to know how we really feel or what we need, in order to live a life without secrets, we first have to be still. We first have to get connected with ourselves so that we can connect with others on a deeper level. And so that was really like noticing that in my own life. I was someone who, if you met me, like I'm the biggest hugger, I'm very social, like, and I still am, right? But I can do it in more of a vulnerable level today, right? Because I could go out there in the world and I'd be smiling and hugging you. I go home and I'm miserable.
Yeah.
I might be sleeping next to my husband, but I feel so alone, you know?
Mhm.
And I was drained and I never was taught growing up how to express my feelings. And, I do have an interesting background story. And so, we talk about secrets and how they create barriers. Well, I actually was a secret myself as well. And so, Life Without Secrets not only expresses what I want people to start living, which is, being able to express their feelings, getting down to those deeper emotions. And we'll talk about a process of how to do that, I'm
Mhm.
sure later. But it's also because I actually was a secret my entire childhood.
Mhm. Let's
So,
do that, please.
yeah.
I think it's
So,
so supportive knowing how we can shift that, but also just knowing what are some of the secrets that you've liberated yourself from. So,
yeah.
yeah, let's go there.
Yeah, so I was a product of an affair. So my dad met my mom at a bar. They started talking. My mom ends up getting pregnant down the line. And then my dad's like, oops, sorry, I'm married.
Mhm.
And, my mom wasn't the most confident person at the time. And really, I don't think said a whole lot and didn't really know what to do with that situation. And my dad was a truck driver. And so I actually got to see my dad about once a year.
Mhm.
And he would go around the United States in his truck and he'd deliver cars to dealerships and that sort of thing. So I still knew who he was. I talked to him on the phone. I saw him about once a year, still had this relationship. And he had this whole other family in another state. And I knew all about them growing up. And I would go around telling people, like, oh, I have 7 brothers and 1 sister. And oh, I haven't met these people, but I'm going to meet them someday. And I would brag about it. And then I got to be at about 11 or 12, which is really when our emotions start really coming to the surface, yet we don't know what they are or what to do with them.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to side note this, like if you're someone who has children and they're reaching this age, this is such a crucial time to be walking them through steps of like, how do I really feel and what do I really need? Like this is such a crucial time. And I say that from a perspective of a little girl that never was taught. And
Mhm.
so I had to unpack those bags later in life, which caused a lot of trauma, right? And I'm happy to tell you that I've done the work now, and things always work out the way they should, right? But going back to the story, I was about 11 or 12 when my mom took me to a therapist's office because I was just an angry child. I was acting out and she really didn't know what to do with me, to be honest. So she dragged me into this therapist's office, and the therapist found out that these people, my dad's family, didn't know I even existed. And she was
Mhm.
like, what? Like I don't think she had ever even heard of that before in her in her career. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
she makes my mom tell me that I was a secret.
Mhm.
And I remember like not really knowing what to do with that information, but knowing that I needed to always be a people pleaser just from a young age, like because I felt like love was earned and not freely given. And so
Mm.
I always knew, and I'll be honest, still like when I take a like strengths finder test,
Mhm.
always one of my top 3 is winning others over. And like that is something like I'm good at. It is a good skill to have, right? Like I can walk in a room and I'm like, I know like what to do
Yeah.
in that environment. However, when you're getting into relationships and things like if you don't know how you feel and what you need in that situation, if you've never been taught how to express that, it causes a lot of pain in the future, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was really good at winning others over. So I had friends in high school. I dated, the popular guy in school, partied a lot, but never knew what I actually felt or needed. It was just how do other people perceive me?
Yeah.
And I end up getting pregnant at 17.
Mhm.
And I remember, being in high school because I was good at winning others over. I had a lot of teachers that liked me as well. And I remember one of the teachers I was close to looked at me and was like, oh man, you had so much potential.
Mm.
And, it was in that moment where I was looking around and I realized that like we all have choices in our lives. And sometimes our biggest, most powerful choices come in those moments where we're facing one of our biggest obstacles, right?
Yes.
And it was in that moment where I was like, you know what? Like, I actually have a choice here. Like, I can become the statistic that that teacher obviously thought I was going to become because maybe that's what she had seen before or what the world had told her. But I could also choose my own path,
Mhm.
and I could become what I wanted to be despite the obstacles that I have created or that have come my way. And
Yeah.
so I chose the other path, and I chose to prove to everyone that I was worthy and that I could do more, and that did not define me, right? But
Mhm.
what I want to like make clear here is, obviously when we achieve, it feels really good, right? And you're like, I just proved everybody wrong. I accomplished this. And you should sit in those positive emotions that you're feeling and soak those up. Absolutely.
Mhm.
But what I want you to be aware of is that, like, at the end of that, does it bring you back to, oh, I don't matter, I'm not good enough when it's all over with, or did you let that sink in?
Yeah.
because I was really good at the achievements, and those were actually the band-aids for me
Mm.
of the deeper wounds that I had internally. And so I was surviving off of my external world instead of working from my internal world and moving it outward. So, what does that mean? Most people, we put band aids over our wounds, right? And those band aids look like achievements. Sometimes they look like addictions, and sometimes they look like lust.
Mhm.
And those three things we choose to try to seal the deeper wound that we have, and we don't ever get to the bottom of what's really going on inside. And so I got really good at slapping that band-aid on. It actually served a great purpose. Like I was, teen mom. I became valedictorian, like you said, of my college. I'm an ER and trauma nursing nurse, and I'm good at it. I love it. And, I used to wear it as a badge of honor that like those things that I see in the emergency room never affected me.
Mm.
I used to be like, oh, I'm so good at this job because like I can be doing something terrible in a room like most people would be on their knees sobbing about, and then I can go over here and crack a joke. I used to think like, oh, I'm so good at this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of how we're trained, right? And even like in military or in police work where, it's like my husband was a former police officer. It's like, you hang up your badge or you hang up your uniform at the end of the day and you go home and you pretend like none of those things affect you, right?
Mhm.
And that's what it means to be good at that.
Yeah.
And what I realize is like we just put the band-aids on, right? And we don't actually get to the real work that needs to be done. And I was good at that. And so it looked on the outside like I was capable, I was strong. But in the inside, what it did is it showed up in my relationships, when the ones closest to us, right? Like we can go out in the world and we can act one way. We go home, we close the
Yep.
doors, and those are our secrets. And that's what we're hiding from the world. And I was miserable and nobody really knew it,
Yeah.
because I was hiding my feelings behind there. And so, yeah, I mean, for the longest answer to your question,
I love
like,
it though. I love it. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a deep person, and I've learned to I always love to just go another layer deeper when I'm with people, asking the right questions, because that's how we get to transformation, right? Like we have to start asking the questions and not live on the surface.
Hmm. Wow, there's so much here. And I wonder, like, so through all the work that you've done, do you feel like you're able to now bring a different layer of almost like empathy into, like, with your patients specifically into
Oh,
that setting? Because I know we
hmm
talked about like how that even that is energy. Like, when I feel like someone is deeply caring about me when I'm on my own healing journey, like whether it's a doctor, whoever it is, I'm like, it does support in my own healing. Like I'll share, like even in my miscarriage journey, I was like,
hmm
felt like a number. And I did feel
hmm
like that wasn't supportive for my own healing or like clarity on what to do. It just felt very like clinical and like, here's your next best steps next. And it was like, wait, this
Yes.
is the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me. Is there any way we can pause and get a little bit more of like empathy or something into this space that could have probably supported with that journey? So I'm
hmm
curious, has that helped you like bringing that level of empathy in? Have you seen that that's helped your clients heal? And how do you also balance that of not fully taking it in and then bringing it home and then sobbing too?
I'm so glad you're asking me this, because I think in the world that we live in right now, this is such an important question, and something I would love to bring awareness on, like
Yeah.
on a bigger scale for. So, like working in the emergency room, it's really fast paced, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, we see people on their worst days most of the time, right?
Yeah.
And it used to be that like in the emergency room, like it was strictly for emergencies, and a lot of it is still emergencies, but there's a lot of different kinds of emergencies. And in the world today, I'm just going to say it, there's a lot of people putting band-aids over their bullet holes, which in the emergency room it can look like addictions a lot, right? So we have a huge substance abuse problem in the world. There is not a single day that I don't work in the ER that we don't have an overdose, like just
Hmm.
period. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I see the world putting these band-aids on, and I
Mhm.
actually, in that environment, I have to just be honest and tell you, it's really difficult to create that pause that you're wanting to feel and that you deserve to feel in that environment. And I'll tell you why. When we're in that environment, if you don't do the work to know how to regulate your nervous system as the provider,
Yes.
what happens is like our nervous system reacts to a situation and our heart rate increases. And as our nervous system reacts, we build up this cortisol, right? And when we have a buildup of cortisol and our heart rate never comes back down to regulate, our body systems don't work in alignment. And what that does is it creates people not thinking as clearly. We then react instead of respond to a situation. So,
Yeah.
the provider in that moment is probably still on high alert from the situation over here that they just dealt with, whether that was someone yelling in their face,
Mm-hmm.
someone hitting them, someone pulling a knife on them. These are actual real things that happen in the emergency room these days.
Right.
And I say that just to bring in awareness, not to say that this is okay and that this is the way it should be. I need people to just like see all the perspectives here, right?
Yeah.
And then I want to tell you why I do what I do now, because
Yeah.
and why I started doing it.
Yes.
So, like they're coming from a situation that caused their nervous system to be on, fight or flight, basically, right? And then they haven't dropped it down. And so when we're looking, when we're coming to a provider for healing and a healing energy, right? A calm energy, a safe energy.
Yes.
And I believe that everybody deserves that. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, our system is not set up to thrive in that environment. Just out of honesty, there's not enough people, there's not enough space, there's not enough emergency rooms. But at the end of the day, there's also not enough people in the world working on themselves, like
Yeah.
doing the internal work for them to regulate their bodies, for them to actually get healthy from
Mm-hmm.
a self accountability perspective. And as a provider, it does wear on us a little bit, like to see when people, not obviously in your situation, but to see people that keep coming back and they don't take accountability,
Right.
it wears on us on another layer too. All in all, though, it's not to say that that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
you know what we can do and everybody needs to do is learn how to regulate their nervous system, right? And so it's funny that you asked the question, because I started my podcast Life Without Secrets because I, especially like during COVID and after COVID and stuff like that, everybody was on so high alert. And I remember, actually, I went to Ed Milet's book launching event,
Mm-hmm.
and Jenna Kutcher spoke at it. And me and Jenna, I'd never met her before. I didn't even actually know who she was at the time. And I was like, it was just me and her. And I'm like, hey, you want to go, out afterwards and chat? And she had just left her second daughter. Her daughter was like 6 months old. She'd never, it was her first trip after that. And she was like, you know what? Yeah, I will. And I was like, cool. And so it was just me and her, we went up there and I was kind of just chatting about the state of the world and how I felt like everybody was, just really burnt out and dysregulated. And that's what I saw on a overview of what I see every day in the real world and all the people that were struggling, right?
Yeah.
And I tell her my whole story and my background with secrets and how they create barriers. And she goes, well, you should really start a podcast. And I was like, oh, I should. I'm like, I've never really thought about starting a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then
Yeah.
she's like, yeah, I think that would be really good. I think you could talk about, this stuff. And I was like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she, like, Monday morning, that after that weekend, her team sent me her course on starting a podcast. And I literally started this course and started the podcast. And this was after I'd done, my own internal work, right? And I
Yeah.
could see the world from a different perspective because, the world, the way we look at the world is always, based on the perspective or the lens that we view from,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know? And so I definitely wore a different lens before I did the work on myself than I do
Mm-hmm.
now. And that's what I want people, when I take them through a transformational journey, the goal really is to put on a different lens, right? To see the world in a different way, to see themselves in a different way, to see their partner in a different way, to see what they do in a different way that is more positive, that is, really transformational.
Mhm.
And so I started the podcast in order to really take myself out of the emergency room environment where I didn't have time to
Mhm.
really sit with someone
Yeah.
and show them how to do that work. And so the podcast for me was an outlet for me to give back to where I felt the ER was really lacking, to be honest.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's actually where it even came from, was like I wanted to fill the gap of what I do in the ER and what I felt like people needed the most,
Mhm.
and so, it is a lot of stories of hope and transformation, because I want people to know, like, I want people to, when they hear other people's stories, or even like mine on here today with you, and you sharing vulnerably about your miscarriages, right? Like, I want people to hear those stories and know that there's still hope for them, and to know that they're never alone in what they're going through.
Yeah. Oh gosh. That one, I just got body chills on that one. I had a close friend of mine share with me a secret that he had kept his entire life.
Mm,
And we're on a road trip and he just felt like it was a safe place to land, shares the secret. And it was like I could see almost like his body being like I
mm,
finally said it. And it was
yeah.
so interesting because as someone who, you know, does this for a living, I mean, I'm like a healer. I hear stories like
Mm-hmm.
this all the time. I'm like, I want to honor that experience and I want you to know you're not alone in that. That
Mm-hmm.
so many people come to me with a very similar story. And I think I like shook him where he was like, "Wait, really?" Like it's like he thought he was so bad or whatever the stories were that he was telling himself, it's like, you're not alone in that. And the second he was able to get it out of his body, it was like I just could sense that his body was like, "Whoa." And it was like finally this weight that he'd been carrying for I don't even know how long, his entire life
Yeah.
felt like it started to unravel. And what I really want to share too that I thought was so powerful was, I'm holding this safe space. And then a month later, I'm in the hot tub. It's just like me and my husband in the hot tub. And I, being really connected to my body and being really connected to the way that I feel, start having this somatic release. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like my body just starts, it felt like I needed to throw up. And it was like, what? Whoa. And through that somatic release, my body was carrying the same secret that I was not consciously aware of. So the
Mm,
fact that he was able to share that with me had my body be able to release that secret and allow it to come into my conscious awareness so that I could actually release it because the same
mm-hmm.
thing did happen to me, but I didn't know that. And so
Mm,
it wasn't until he shared his quote unquote secret that I was then able to be liberated from mine that I didn't even know that I had. And so, this idea of we're not alone in what we're experiencing, when we can find safe places to land, unbiased,
mm-hmm.
safe places to land, especially with the shadow work and that deep, deep, like our deepest quote unquote wounds that we're moving through and wanting to heal, like lean into the safest space for that. Like allow yourself to
Mm-hmm.
really be seen and witnessed in that. And all of a sudden, it's like, I can't tell you, I felt like something untied within my stomach. It was like
Mm-hmm.
wild.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my God, I feel liberated now. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just like, to your point, like we're not alone in this. Like when we can find those safe spaces, when we release it, when he released it, it was more of a release in the collective. Then I was able to release it and there was more release in the collective energetically, right?
Yeah,
One is
absolutely.
healing, more healing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's just one potent example of exactly what you're saying. Like we're not alone in that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll be surprised at how many people will raise their hand and be like, me too. Like also had that,
100%. Yep.
Have you experienced that as you've been
Oh,
sharing more? Yeah.
yeah. So I have a course called Love Without Secrets,
Yeah.
and it's for couples, because what I've noticed is that, when we enter into like a really intimate relationship, it's almost like we get more secrets,
Mm,
because like we see the world and we see couples expressing like the best parts of themselves,
mm,
right? And so like you go online on Instagram and you see the perfect family and
right.
these awesome vacations. And like I do the same thing, right? I'm not like, here's my dirty laundry or anything like that.
Yeah.
But
For
like,
sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
but like, and I'm not saying like you have to go share it with everybody, but
Right.
it's really important to have that safe place to be able to reveal, to heal, right? And I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
like so in my own relationship, I call it in our course, we're unpacking our grief cases.
Mm,
And
yeah.
and this is how it went for us. So my husband and you guys know my story now of being a secret and then becoming a teen mom and all the things that go with that, right? But we both came from broken families, my husband, both and I. And in the beginning of a relationship, those things that you've been through kind of connect you almost on a deeper level. You feel like, oh, this person gets me. However, nobody taught you how to unpack the stuff that you went through.
Mhm. Right.
And so when you enter in this relationship, you might be able to see each other, confide in each other. You feel connected to that person because they see you, they understand you, right? But and in the beginning, it feels like, okay, like I can even hold your grief case or your luggage, right? It might even weigh 40 pounds, but I can hold it for you.
Mhm.
Like we can hold each other's baggage. And then eventually what happens is we start to become more baggage to each other because
Mhm.
we never unpacked it. And so these grief cases we're carrying, we end up just like adding more to it and they get heavier and heavier and the seams get weaker and weaker
Yeah.
until one day they all fall apart. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened in our relationship.
Mhm.
It was ugly. We both made mistakes in our relationship. Him before we were married, me after I was married. I end up like seeking validation outside of my marriage with another guy. Like, I mean, and I say this out of vulnerability because, there's somebody listening that's going to go, "Oh my gosh, me too."
Mhm.
And these are life without secrets, right? Like I'm okay sharing this on a more public platform because I've done a lot of healing work and I know
Yes.
that it's revealing is healing and I know that somebody else needs to hear it too because you're never alone in what you're going through. And
Mhm.
I cannot tell you, Christina, how many people have come to me and said, "Me too."
Yes.
And I get
Yeah.
to actually, and they might have even been hiding it for 20 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they've been in the relationship and really not having a healthy, fruitful relationship because they've been
Yeah.
stuffing this secret down for 20 years.
Mhm.
And to get to bring that up and actually do the healing work is so powerful. It was powerful in my own relationship. It gives me chills thinking about it.
Do. Yeah.
And it's like you don't have to live that way. You don't have to, it doesn't have to look so different when you close the doors of your home.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Mhm.
And the only reason that it is that way for so many is because we were raised in a world that like never taught us what to do with it.
Mhm.
And so I love teaching people in the program. I created a method. It's called the Truthful Method in our program. And, we start with the individual and where they're at. And, I'm happy to walk you through like we do an exercise in week 1. It's an 8-week program. And I
Mhm.
think everybody should do this exercise all of the time.
Yes.
Um,
Please share that with us.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's all about emotions,
Yeah.
like I mean, we'll graduate from there, but like if we don't know how we feel, then we can't actually ask for what we need either. And
Right.
we don't even know what that is.
Mhm.
And so step 1 is like getting to like another deeper level. And
Mhm.
so many times in a relationship what we'll say is I'm tired, I'm busy, and
Mhm.
sometimes we'll even say things like I'm stressed or I'm struggling.
Mhm.
But my question is like, well, what does that actually mean?
So true.
You
Yes.
know? Like
Yeah.
what is I'm tired? What is I'm struggling? Like I'm happy that you're coming to me and you're saying I'm tired or I'm struggling, but like then what am I supposed to do with that, right? Like your
Yes.
partner's like, "Okay," and then they're like tiptoeing around and not really sure what to do, and then you guys start reacting because nobody's acting the way you want them to, right? And you walk away feeling totally unseen, unheard, and
Yeah.
disconnected. And so, we start with just like, what are the emotions? What do we feel like? And so first we start with stressors. because these are the things that drain our energy. These are the things that make us feel stressed, tired, struggling, And so we need to identify what those things in our life are. So, get out a piece of paper. In this exercise, we're going to do 3 columns. The first one is going to be listing all the stressors. Is it your finances? Is it your boss? Is it your teenager? Is it your computer isn't working right? I'm talking like little things, big things.
Mm-hmm.
Is it your mother-in-law? Is it I don't care what it is. I want you to write it down. All the stressors that come to your mind, we're brain dumping right now and writing them down. Okay. In the next column next to it, you're going to write, what is the emotion that you feel from this stressor? And if you're anything like me who pushed down your emotions, never knew how you felt, nobody ever asked you, you probably have no clue,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So,
You're like
so
tired,
true.
tired, tired.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah. Right.
that's what you
Sad,
write down.
sad,
Yeah.
sad,
Yeah.
sad. It's like there's so many more emotions available that are actually like so much more potent, right? But yeah,
Yes.
same
So
story for me. I'm like sad, angry.
yeah, like
Yeah.
that's all I know. I don't really know how I feel.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So if you're anything like me in the beginning of my journey, I actually carried around a list of 100 emotions when I first started in
Mhm.
my journey.
Yeah.
And it was just an easy way to just start being more aware of how I felt because I didn't have the words to express it or like to really know. All I knew was tired or,
Mhm.
like frustrated, whatever.
Mhm.
So I actually, I have a magazine for couples as well. It's called the Truthful Magazine. And in the back of the magazine is there's a little heart shape and it has like 100 emotions in it. So
I
I
love
always give people that resource. If you go to lifewithoutsecrets.com, you can just download the magazine and go to the
it.
back towards the back. And there is tons of emotions in this little heart bubble for you to really sit with and decide, like, is that how I really feel in this stressful situation?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's column number 2. So we have the stressor, the feeling that the stressor creates. And this third column, I want you to write down what you do in response to that stressor.
Mm.
Okay. So,
Interesting.
like, do
Yeah.
you complain? Do you
Mhm.
blame? Do you push it under the rug? Do you avoid it altogether? What is it that you do in response to these stressors?
Mhm.
And this is a judgment-free zone, okay?
Yes.
I don't want you to write down like what you think you should do. I want you
Right.
to write down
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
this is why the acronym is truthful because you're only going to heal what you're willing to be truthful about.
So true. Yeah.
Okay. And so like this is not for somebody else. This is for ourselves right now. And like you need to just be totally truthful with yourself.
Mhm.
And so those are the first thing that we do is we go through the stressors, okay? The
Mhm.
next thing we do is we go to the positive because we have life can feel hard, but there is still so many positive things in our life. And it's
Mhm.
so important to remember that.
Mhm.
And so the next exercise we do is bringing up those moments in our life that have given us so much energy, that renewed our souls, that gave us these positive emotions. And so anything that comes to your mind, I want you to brain dump on that. Like, what are the things in your life that created those positive emotions? Like for me, it was like walking across the stage on my college graduation as valedictorian. Like, let me
Mhm.
tell you, like, that was
Mhm.
confidence, power,
Mhm.
courage. And
Yeah.
again, if you don't know the positive emotions that it came, print out your 100 list of emotions, go to the back of the magazine. Like,
Yeah.
it's so important to have it in your hand to be able to fully identify that and embrace that emotion and just keep going. What are the positive things in your life? What is the emotion attached to it that you felt? And the reason why we really want you to sit with this for a while, especially if you're not feeling like you like maybe you are in this negative cycle where you're like the negative has been consuming you. Normally, when you fill out that stressor exercise, what you're going to notice that there's going to be a couple emotions that come up the most.
Mhm.
And that could be a sign that that's kind of like a lens that you could be living through as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we kind of, and we go through that in like the whole process of the transformation as well. But it's something to really pay attention to. And because our brain is really a pattern recognition system. And
Yeah.
so if we're finding that we are feeling this certain emotion a lot, it's more than likely that your brain is also looking for it to
Mm.
to validate you in how you feel.
Yes.
Right. And so for me, for instance, just for an example, since my childhood, I would feel like I didn't matter.
Mm.
And so my husband in our relationship, because I never unpacked my bags, he could do 100 things right. And I would see the two things that told me that he didn't matter because that's what my brain was looking for. And it was just trying to validate me to prove that I'm right.
So true. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So, but the positive list, this is going to be your emotional playlist, is what I call it.
Mm.
And this is like, when you get in your car, especially like this is one of the things that I wrote on my positive list too.
Mm.
When you got your license and you drove off by yourself for the first time, like, how did
Mm.
that make you feel?
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
invigorated, like
Yeah.
freedom.
Yes.
Like
Totally.
write
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
down, write it
Mhm.
down. And
Yeah.
like those are those moments in your life. That is your emotional playlist. When you get in your car and you're like, you know what, I really feel like I need to be uplifted right now. And you hit your favorite song and you
Mhm.
push play and you start singing in your
Yep.
car. Like that's your emotional playlist. Like
Oh,
that's
I
what
love
you're
it.
creating by writing down all of these positive emotions or positive things in your life that made you feel renewed, re-energized, and those emotions that you felt with it, that's your emotional playlist. So when you are in that stressing moment, when you're in the tough, when you're in that negative cycle, like you can hit play. You can hit
Mm.
play on the emotional playlist that you created to know, like, I don't have to feel nervous to get on this
Yeah.
stage. I
Yeah.
can feel courageous because I've had this situation in my past that created this positive emotion, and I can exchange that for another. Like we don't have to live in the negative. We don't have to do that. We can hit play on the positive and live our life through that playlist.
I love it. So if someone is having a moment where they're like, okay, I'm frustrated or whatever the emotion is that's coming through, would you say then the remedy when they're in the emotion is to say, I'm going to hit play on that other memory? Or is there something else that you would guide someone through that's like, all right, I'm feeling this. This is how it's playing out. Is there something else you would say, here's another way to unpack that and get yourself back into a state of alignment or that positive
Yeah.
lens?
So, and I feel like me and you are very similar on this with breath
Mhm.
work, right? So
Yes. Oh my gosh.
we,
Yes.
I walk people through a breath work exercise,
Yes.
and we have to, because in order to switch from a negative to a positive, we have to realign ourselves, right? We
You
have
got it.
to
Neutralize, realign.
reset. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And the reason why I focus on emotions is because our heart actually sends more messages to our brain than our brain sends to our heart.
Mm.
Okay, so a
Yeah.
lot a lot of people out there are talking about our thoughts, which obviously mindset thoughts they're so powerful, right? But where do they come from? Oftentimes, like every time, they come
Yeah.
from they
Like
come
every day.
from right,
Yeah.
they come
Yeah.
from a deep-seated emotion, and that's
Yeah.
where that thought started, right?
So true.
And what
Mm.
happens from a physiological perspective is that our hearts actually create a rhythm based on the emotion that we're feeling.
Mm.
Okay, so we've heard a lot about heart rate variability.
Mm-hmm.
And so our heart rate variability is like the beat to beat change that our heart beats. And this is a lot based on the emotions that we feel. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a monitor. I can hook you up and actually show you in real life, like
Mm.
what this looks like. And it's
So
fascinating.
cool. Yes.
And that's why I love medical and what I do. And also the work and regulation and how that affects our bodies and our lives and our relationships. It's
Yes.
powerful.
Yes.
This isn't just like some woo woo. This is like science and
Yeah.
like
All of it.
health and
Yeah.
wellness and the secrets to having a healthy life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
these are just so important. And so yeah, so your emotions create a heart rhythm. Your
Mm-hmm.
heart then sends this rhythm to your brain. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're in a negative emotion, it creates
Mm-hmm.
cortisol, it creates all these hormones. And what the message that gets sent to the brain is very chaotic. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you can chart it. I can show you on a monitor. This is real stuff here that we're talking about. And then your brain has to decide what to do with it. And when it's chaos, your brain takes a while for it to be like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do with this? What message do I send every other part of the body?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we go into like these reactive modes, right? We go into
Yes.
fight or flight. And so when we can actually take those deep breaths and reset and bring in a more positive emotion, whether that's calm, and a lot of people think that it has to be calm when you're doing like breath work and stuff like that. But like when just as an example, if I'm going to go speak to a whole audience, like I don't want to just be like, okay, everybody, like
Right. Yeah. I want to be engaging
I
in
want to
some
be like,
capacity.
yeah, like I want to be
Yeah.
entertaining and I don't
Yeah.
want people
Yeah.
to fall asleep on me,
Right. For
And so
sure.
like
Yeah.
maybe calm isn't really the word, the feeling I want to have. Like you can be regulated and be in a positive state, and that's courage, it's power, it's
Yeah.
confidence, right? And doesn't
Yes.
mean that like when we do this breath work, it doesn't mean that you necessarily just have to feel calm. Like
Mm-hmm. So true.
you can feel courage.
Yeah.
Whatever that positive emotion is that you need in there, you can bring that into your breath work and regulate yourself and align the systems in your body, your lungs, your heart, your GI system, like make
Mm.
them all work together so that you can perform optimally, that you can think clearly, that you can respond in the way that you want to respond, whether that's in your relationship or on that stage or in that business decision. Like it's all relative. And so, this is like what I feel so passionate about. And that's kind of like, the first step that we walk through in the program that I teach now. And, I get to see the ER and do the work there. And I also, energy is everything, like, Christina, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And the best thing we can do is learn how to regulate ourselves. Like whether you're a patient or whether you're a provider or whether you're a business owner or an employee, whoever you are, like when you're entering that situation with another human being, energy is everything. And whether you're saying it or not saying it, they know how you feel.
So true.
And
Not
so
more true. Yeah.
yeah, and so I mean, everybody has their own lie detector.
Mm-hmm.
We all have one, and it's
Yes.
energy. You feel
Yes.
someone's energy. You don't even have to be in the same, like sitting next to them. Like
Yeah.
how about like when, let's say your parents were arguing when you were young
Mm-hmm.
and you walked into the house and nobody's saying anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
you can feel the energy, something
Oh
just
yeah.
happened, right? Like
Yes.
and that's energy.
Yeah.
And so when you know how to regulate your own energy, it's powerful for every part of your life.
It's so true. I think I love how all of this is mind, body, and spirit, where you're just getting really clear
Mm.
on like, okay, what is it that I'm actually feeling here? And how can I
Mm-hmm.
neutralize it? That neutralization is so powerful because I think the spiritually bypassing thing that I used
Yes.
to do was like, I can't be upset. I just have to be happy. And it was like, none of this is feeling authentic. I just haven't even let myself experience the deep emotion. And so
Yep.
I just tried to bring the pendulum to the other side. But like you're saying, with breath work or with different modalities that get us to just like get our body back into alignment and start to really neutralize what we're experiencing. And sometimes, like for me, when I'm doing breath work, it will actually allow me to express too. Like there's these hidden emotions sometimes that I haven't let myself feel that when I start breathing, it's almost like it's uprooting some of
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah, some of
Yeah.
the
Yep.
anger or the sadness or whatever it might be. And so I know breath work is so powerful at just like letting it come to the surface and release so that we
Mm-hmm.
can then neutralize and drop into something that feels better in the body. But to your point, like it's so powerful to just start to uproot that, to shift that. And our energy really does tell such a powerful story. And just think about like all the times that we haven't expressed, you're carrying that in your energy. So even when you're not saying it, not sharing the secrets,
Yep.
people feel it. People
Yep.
are like, there's something here that's not matching what they're saying, right? Like, I'm
Yes.
fine. I'm fine. And it's like, it feels like there's something
Mm-hmm.
deeper here. Like you need a big freaking hug, but you're not saying
Yes.
like, and so it's like, it's really powerful. The second we can start to tune into our own emotions and our
Mm-hmm.
own energy is when we can start to really show up for the people in our life the way that we
Mm-hmm.
want to, our clients the way that we want to, right?
Yep.
The people in the ER the way that you want to, that level of
Yeah.
empathy where you can meet them knowing this is one of the most profound moments of their life. And you're like, I
Yeah.
can meet you there. And I'm
Yep.
not going to hold it. And I'm going to know how to release that too, because it's not mine to hold, but I can still meet you there. It's a superpower.
Yeah, for
So I
sure.
just love that you're teaching individuals, but also couples how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so powerful. And to your point, what it reminded me of too is like the clarity piece can be so helpful in
Mm.
relationships. Like I
Yes.
remember even saying to my husband, like, I want to dial up romance. And he was like, what does romance mean to you? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
good question. And I had to think about it. I'm like, I don't have an answer. Like, let me think. And then when I started to really think about it, I'm like, honestly, like a surprise movie night where you just like get my favorite snacks and we watch a movie. And he's like, I would not have guessed that, but I like it, you know? And so it's like things like that where it's like the more that I got clear on what I wanted, the easier it was for him to say, well, yeah, I'd love to do that for you. Or here's how you can meet me too, you know?
Exactly.
So yeah, it's powerful that you're doing that with couples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how often like do we have a situation where we're both doing our own circle and we're not doing a circle together? And what does that look like? It's
Yes.
like, you go to work, and maybe you both go to work and you're in your own circles there, and then you come home and you don't know how to create a circle together, or maybe one's
Yeah.
at home and one's at work and you're operating in two separate circles, and like how do we form that circle and make it work together? And I was just sharing with you before we got on this call that like, by this time of year, like my husband and I are both very much go-getters. Like
Mhm.
it's something that attracted us to each other in the beginning because we shared that same passion and energy and like multi-passionate and just like going after things. But it also can be quite difficult in a relationship when you have two very passionate people and maybe not even passionate about the same exact things, right? So we're not like
Mhm.
doing the exact same work. Like we're doing similar work, but we have two different areas that we're working on this work. And we start at the beginning of the year and we kind of map out our goals for the year and we talk about them together, around New Year's and what that looks like. And we ask questions and we get clear. But by June, like where I'm like, hello, where are you? Where are you going? Oh, you're over there. Okay. Like there's things that come up. Like that's 6 months.
Mhm.
That's a really long time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so like just
Mhm.
this week, I was like, you know what? I think we need to, have more clarity because I
Yeah.
have all of these things coming at me. Also, summertime is a little bit more difficult because there's kids home, and yet you still have all these, things that you're passionate about that you want to do. But I'm also passionate about being a mother and being there for my
Mhm.
children and all of that. And so it becomes almost like a cluster, right? And so we
Mhm.
need to like separate the cluster, unwind it, and get clarity and clear pathways, like remove the trees that have come down and clear the
Mhm.
path. And
Yeah.
so, I said, hey, we need a brain mapping date.
Yes. What does that look like?
So we set a date
Mhm.
and we go to like a coffee shop or you can go
Mhm.
out to dinner. I usually say like go to a little bit more of a quiet place or sometimes we'll go to the lake and do this in our car, but
Yeah.
I like to have a table usually, but it
Yeah.
can't be in my home because I'll find something else to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm. Totally. Yeah.
and we go, we get a babysitter and then he has his own big piece of paper and I
Mhm.
have my own big piece of paper. And we do a breathwork exercise and then we write down all the things that we have that we're working on. Like we
Yeah.
literally brain dump everything and anything that comes to your mind, you have to write down.
I love this.
So it ends up
Yeah.
looking like a circle. And I walk couples through this in the program as well. And we,
Mm.
I won't, it's like a whole process, which we won't have
Mhm.
time to obviously go into everything. So I'll just kind of give you the
Right.
gist of it. But you'll write like bubbles, and then those bubbles will have a million different things. And sometimes it's one piece of paper, and sometimes it's like multiple pieces of paper. So
Mhm.
he has his brain map, I have my brain map. When we're finished, we figure out how do those work together And
Mm.
then we brain map on that. And so there's going to be
Mm.
more that we put onto this brain mapping, right?
I
And
love
this
this.
is what this does is it helps empty our brains.
Hmm.
And what we need to empty our brain in order to get clear on the process.
So true.
And so once we have really brain mapped all the things that have come up for us, for ourselves and together,
Mhm.
then we tap into our hearts.
Yeah.
And, what is so interesting when you do that, and like, I mean, it's my favorite thing to do on retreats. When
Mm.
I walk people through a process during the retreat. Usually it's like 3 days, and I teach certain exercises day 1, day 2, day 3. And the final exercise that we do is brain mapping to heart mapping. And
Mm.
it is probably my most favorite thing to
Hmm.
like see what comes up for people when you
Hmm.
actually tap into their heart, and then they're like, oh, well, I know the first two things I'm going to do now. Like, and it's very clear and I feel really good about it. And that's what you want, right? Like, not
Yeah.
only do you want to have a process, but you want to feel good about it and you want to be clear. And when you feel good about something and you know where you're going, when other people try to come at you and offer you all these things, right? Because we know that that's just the world, and that's fine. I love it. But like, we have to be clear about our own process, right?
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
and we are so intuitive. We are intuitive beings, as you know.
Hmm.
And, like, we have the answers.
Hmm.
Like, we
We
have the
do.
answers of
We
like,
do.
and if we don't have the answers, we know where to get them.
Hmm.
We know.
Yeah.
And we have to tap into that. And so I kind of like walk them through that process. And it is just like, and not only do they have a process and a path and they feel good about it, but they feel empowered.
Yeah.
And so it is literally my favorite thing. But we do that for in our relationship. I'm like, okay, we're multi-passionate, like this is what you have going on, this is what I have going on, but what does our heart really need right now?
Hmm.
And how do we get there in all these different areas?
Mm. So how does the heart mapping work? Because I'm like visualizing this. I see like the brain mapping and all that. How does it work? Like, how do the two coalesce together? Just out of
Yeah.
curiosity. Yeah.
So after you empty your brain, we do a breathing exercise and we walk you through.
Yeah.
It's a process one. We start with
Right.
like some heart focused breathing, and then we talk through in the mind. It's like, a minute to 2 minute process.
Hmm.
Usually 2 minutes. And we just get really quiet, and you have to write down, or usually what will happen is you have all these things on a piece of paper and your mind will go exactly where you need to start, and you'll circle it.
Mm.
And you'll be
So
like,
you're using your heart to circle. Is
yeah,
that what you're saying?
yeah,
Okay. To see like what's actually in most alignment,
yes,
deepest
yes,
alignment.
yeah,
Okay. Oh, I
yeah.
love that. That's
But
powerful.
oftentimes like something different might come up too. You're
Hmm.
like, you're like, oh, well, I have my mind so focused on this, but like,
So true.
where I'm really guided and what feels best for me is over here. And
Yeah.
you write that down,
Yeah.
and sometimes what happens though is it's like a process. So maybe it is something different and you're guided over here. So you
Hmm.
write that down, but then you have to do the process all over again.
Hmm.
Right. And so like you'll go back, okay, do I need to brain dump on that? Okay, let me like tap back into my heart. Like, what is going on here? And it's a whole process.
Yeah.
It's different for everybody. But and usually like we don't start with that.
Hmm.
Like in any of the programs I teach, that's one of the last things we do, because
Yeah.
in order to get to that point, you have to go through a whole process to get there in order for it to
Mhm.
really like work and you see the magic. But it's seriously, it is the best.
Yes. I love too that there's like overlapping between the two because I do feel like sometimes me and Brad will be up to like a totally separate things where he's like, I'm like, he has no idea what I'm doing all day, and I have no idea what he's doing all
Hmm.
day. So I think there's actually so much beauty in being like, wait, I didn't know you've even been doing this. What if I connect you with this person that can actually help you do that thing? Like
Hmm.
little stuff
Hmm.
like will come to mind. We actually had like a realization just the other night where I was like, wait, what if I connected you with XYZ? Would that be helpful? And he was like, yeah, I didn't even think about it. So it's like
Hmm.
he was taking the long route and I didn't realize I had the shortcut, but it's like we just needed to have the conversation to be like, well, wait, what if you stopped doing it that way and maybe you checked in here? And he was like, that would be a great idea. So I love just the
Yeah.
consciousness of like one, the connection points. Like, I would love to know what you're doing, and I would love for you to know what I'm doing. And then you have a
Mhm.
deeper appreciation for each other. Like, man, you're like doing a lot over there. Like, thank you.
Yes.
Like
And
it's
that's
just
what
the
I was gonna
awareness.
say. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was gonna say too. It's like it's interesting because you're like, wow, like that's a lot, and you get
Mhm.
to see like what's actually going on in their brain,
Totally. So cool.
and then it's really cool to then see like, oh, that's where your heart is at.
Yeah.
And like there's like a level of like understanding, of compassion, of being seen, right?
Yeah.
And then like then those two circles that you have got going on, like we can make it one, it's
Mhm.
really it's a powerful exercise. It's one of my favorite things.
I'm
It,
definitely going to do
and
this. So amazing. Yeah.
individually and with couples. Like in the
Yeah.
retreat, I really want to do a couples retreat. It's very much
Yeah.
calling my name.
Mhm.
I've not done it yet on a retreat level because I've done women ones, which that, you can get a house and, we're
Mhm.
all together and we do this work and it's powerful. But in a couples, I'm like, okay, I need to have it like somewhere else where it's like a hotel or something. So you have your own room you can go back to and kind of do the work
Right.
together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I've been playing with that idea actually a lot because I really want to do it in the future, but haven't had a date or anything yet.
Sounds like a bubble that you're circling, right?
I know,
On your mind map. I'm like, I
right?
like this. This feels very, very much so in alignment because there's something to be said about the power of like really setting that intention and coming into like a retreat like space where you're like, all right, we're putting everything else on pause. Let's get really
Yeah.
conscious
Yep.
these exercises. And then it sounds like through the processes that you have, there's a way that they can integrate that after the retreat, which I think is so powerful. I've been to
Mhm.
retreats where I'm like, wait, you're throwing me back into the real world. Like I need some like processes here.
Yes.
So it sounds like the way that you do it is so conscious because you're bringing people in, getting them set up for success because you're really thinking about it ahead of time, how to really, create something that feels safe where they can go off and
Mhm.
then come back. And then also how to integrate afterwards. I love
Yeah.
that. That's
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the program that we do right now is, with me online for 8 weeks. It's once a week for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And we have another program. I do it like right now, I'm just doing it twice a year. So
Hmm.
another one starts in August. So if you're
Love it.
interested, you can find it on my website under courses. And that is also online and it's in the morning. Like if you have kids, they'd be at school. And it's
Hmm.
really worth taking the time to just like have a time out to yourselves. Like can you go into work a little bit later? Can,
Hmm.
like figure it out so you can have that time together because it's
Yeah.
it's so important. And I mean, think about like your relationship, that person is like it's your most intimate, it's the person that knows you like the most. And it's
Hmm.
also like because they're that person, it's the one you take out all your stuff on,
Hmm.
right? And so like we really
Sure.
have to work on ourselves in order to show up in that
Yes,
relationship. So
absolutely.
yeah.
So is it for couples or could an individual do it? Just for clarity.
I also do I have done individual type of coaching. I definitely enjoy a group setting better because
Yeah.
again, like it goes back to like you're never alone in what you're going through and when you see other people sharing, it almost is like it's an opening process, and I think it's much better like
Yeah.
in a group setting personally, which is why like, I have done retreats
Hmm.
where the individual comes and we go through a process
Hmm.
because it's in a group setting, we're together,
Yeah.
like and it is that I love is so powerful. I would, I'm willing to do an individual for sure. I definitely love doing it in a group better. I think it's better for
Yeah.
everybody
Mm.
involved, it's just even when you're in a one-on-one, like, we can break down the barriers together, but it's a whole nother thing to see like, hey, somebody else feels the exact same way.
Yes.
You're not
So
the only
true.
one.
So true. Yeah. Like when people share, I find it's like the permission for me to share too. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why now, because of all the work that I do, I'm like one of the first ones to share because I'm like, whatever,
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
care,
Me
And
too. Me
so
too.
I'll raise my hand and I'll share. And then it feels like other people are like slowly like, me too. And I'm like, great. And I'll go to the depths of it. Like I'm like not nervous to share anything anymore because I've met myself in the deepest and darkest parts of my own experience and shadows. And so, and I bring light into that when I bring it
Mm-hmm.
out and I share it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's so powerful when we witness people that are willing to do that. in that group like setting, it's like, oh, wait, I'm not the only one. And wait, that actually made me think of something else that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even individually think of. Oh my gosh, I also want to unpack something like that, So
Yeah.
so true, so
Yeah.
powerful. I'm actually going to drop all of those things that you mentioned in the show notes. So for
Yeah.
those who want the magazine, they can drop down and get it there. For anyone who wants to look into this incredible experience to this group setting where you can really unpack and better understand your relationship and how to be a lot more conscious in that space, I'll drop that link below as well. So you can connect with Jillian. Jillian, this has been amazing. I'm
Mm.
so grateful for you, just the depth of everything, like who you are and everything that you've created for people to meet that part of themselves too. And so I'm just so grateful. So I know that there are going to be so many people that want to connect with you. Where can they connect with you?
Honestly, I am best or the most probably on Instagram.
Yep. Yeah.
So I just go to Life Without Secrets podcast. That's actually my handle because my
Mhm.
other one got taken away by Instagram for pretending to be someone else. And I'm always like, thank you for noticing that I
Yeah.
was growing in that time of my life.
Yeah. Good. An actual release of an old version of you. Amazing.
So right now it's just I'm on the Life Without Secrets podcast page the most. Please send me a DM though. Like don't just follow me. Like say
Yeah.
like, hey, I heard you on Christina's podcast or whatever, so that I can connect that and go follow you back, because
Yeah.
sometimes people ask you to be your friend and you're like, do I know you? Do I not know
Yeah.
you? How do I know you? So
Yes.
send me a message.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And of course, if there are any takeaways that you had, feel free to screenshot the episode, tag both of us, Life
Yes.
Without Secrets podcast, and then at I am Christina Deering. We love learning about the things that interest you the most. It makes me create content on it. It makes me
Yeah.
it's the way that I'm teaching and bringing things into the world because I'm like, it's nice to have a pulse on what people find interesting and what people are
So
also,
true.
I need more of this. It's like, it's just
Yeah.
so inspiring to hear what lights you up and what you want us to dig into even more.
Same.
Yeah.
Love that.
Hey, well, Jillian, thank you so much. This was incredible. And for everyone who is tuning in, thank you so much for giving us your most precious resource, your time. I hope you received something really beautiful today, and we will talk to you soon. Until next time.